Hi everybody, and thank you for joining me here today. I'm Tengiz from Archipeg, which is a cloud-based digital enterprise architecture software. And today I want to discuss a C4 model, support for which we recently added to the application. And for that, let's first open the C4 meta model, which is right here in the Learning Center under the Archipeg's meta models. As you can see, it is one of the supported meta models at the moment, and we plan to add more in the future, but for now let's focus on the C4 model. So on this page you will find both the synopsis as well as a detailed description of this meta model. And generally speaking, this is a model for expressing your software architecture needs, both from planning as well as implementation standpoint. So it is very popular among software engineers and software architects. It will help you tackle and express intents on various levels, starting from applications to solutions and a little bit on the enterprise landscape level as well. While in this video I will not focus on the detailed explanation of the C4 model, you can always go to its original source, which is c4model.com, and learn more about this model. For now, let's focus on the meta models that we support in the Archipeg. So the idea is very simple. As always, we have expressed the C4 model concepts as the object types and as associations between them to allow you to connect those concepts with each other, just like C4 model explains that part. And for clarity of the information, we have split the diagram of the C4 model meta model right here into the sections that correspond to the chapters from the C4 model documentation when you go through it. So first we have the first level, system context, standing for the first C in the C4 model abbreviation. Then comes the container. Afterwards we have component, and the level 4 code is absent from the C4 model meta model in Archipeg. And that is a common approach that almost all tools supporting C4 model would take, because the level 4 is optional as described by its original author, and it's recommended that you use other tools to express the intentions in that level, specifically some UML tools or even Visio or some other presentation tools. In other words, this meta model in Archipeg supports all required and mandatory levels of the C4 model as recommended by its author. Before going any further, I want to mention that this meta model supports not only those C3s, but also several supplementary levels, and you will find more details as you scroll down. And here it is. The first supplementary level supported by this meta model is system landscape diagrams, and the next one is deployment diagrams. Again, those are supplementary levels and considered as optional for the tools that try to implement C4 model as such. And in Archipeg, we decided to support these levels to help you express more information about your model. We will go through each mentioned level in more detail a little bit later, but for now let me remind you that this meta model diagram can be read just like others, so you need to first focus on the highlighted elements, which will be not repeated throughout the diagram. So each element will be highlighted only once on this diagram, such as person, for instance. It is highlighted only here in the system context section, and in other sections it will participate as a supporting element and not highlighted anymore. This way of expressing the diagram will help you find all participants easily because they are highlighted, and you can as well focus on the most important elements because the unhighlighted parts are just the supporting elements in each section. Before jumping to the application, let's agree on some rules. I will have this meta model diagram open right here, and I will be switching back and forth between the application and this diagram because I want to explain every section one by one, and I will show you objects that correspond to that section only, and that way you can easily follow both the meta model as well as the presented content. Here I have just signed into my account under Archipeg, and you see a typical dashboard screen. Let's go to the projects and see one of them which I have prepared for the demo. And here it is. The C4 example is the one we need. Let me open it. And here it is. As you can see, I have created 37 objects, which I think is plenty and enough to explain the intent of both the C4 model as well as how it's implemented within this Archipeg meta model. Let's go and explore our graph of objects. Let me make the size of the diagram more convenient to see and present. Now let's go back to our meta model diagram, and we will start with the system context level. In this level of diagrams, we will be using two kinds of objects. First is software system and the other is a person. And what this level of diagram will help express is how systems are integrated, how they interact with each other, and who are the persons or people who use those systems. Now let's go back to the application and see what kinds of software systems and persons we have captured. We have 4 software systems. Let me drop all of them on the diagram first. And here they are. It seems that the internet banking system accesses email system and mainframe banking system, and the ATM software system accesses mainframe banking system as well. Now let's drop one person on this diagram, which is personal banking customer. And it is obvious that this person uses 3 systems right here. Let's understand the relationship between these systems and this person. And as you can see, we have 2 different kinds of relationships. The personal banking customer, it seems, uses internet banking system, perhaps for his own personal reasons, and for the same it uses ATM software system. As about the email system, it seems it sends emails to the personal banking customer because the label mentions that the email system serves persons. So the email system initiates this association or the connection between these 2 object types. What we have on the screen is a good representation or a good example of a system context diagram. And if you wanted to, you could go ahead and save it as a diagram, and you already have it. Let's move to the next section, which is the container diagram. And the container diagram helps you understand what are the deployable units under each software system, and that deployable unit is a container. And afterwards you can express such intention as what technologies that container uses, what are the deployment nodes on which this container is hosted, and finally what are the infrastructure nodes or capabilities that this container invokes or uses. It is important to note that the container and technology belong to the container level diagrams as officially documented on the c4model.com website. As about the deployment and infrastructure nodes, they come with a supplementary level, a deployment diagram, which you as well can express using this meta model in Archipeg. So for clarity, let me first create one container level diagram, and then we will create another diagram later, which will be the supplementary level, a deployment diagram. Let's do that. So here I tried to create a container diagram. As you can see, I have the supporting elements, which are the software systems, and I have total of 5 containers on this diagram and various relationships between them. Let's try to understand what this diagram shows. First of all, the internet banking system turns out consists of all these containers. In other words, all these containers are various deployment units which belong to the internet banking system. For clarity, I have removed all other associations between the internet banking system and its belonging components except the API application, because they were just complicating the view in this case for demonstration purposes. As you can see, API application component is quite busy by accessing both the mainframe banking system as well as email system software systems, and hence it serves like an integration tier of the internet banking system. As about other containers, they have associations between each other as well as with the API application. Specifically, web application accesses single page application, which in turn uses API application, which accesses the database which backs this entire system, it seems. On the other hand, a mobile application also perhaps involves API application using some HTTP endpoints. And this way we have zoomed into the internet banking system software system, and we have seen how the components underneath integrate with each other as well as with the software systems outside of the internet banking system. Next, let's see what kind of technologies these containers use, because that level of detail is part of the container diagrams as well. So let's go ahead and see that. As you can see, the web application, it seems, utilizes 2 technologies, Java and Spring MVC, and most of the other components utilize a single technology except the single page app, which utilizes Angular and JavaScript. This is a good enough diagram for the container level. Let's now try to express another diagram, which will be the deployment level diagram, which I promised you earlier. So here it is. I have placed a lot of various objects here, and it made the picture a little bit messy, but I hope it's worth it, because on this picture we see a lot of useful information. First, we can explore how our deployment environment looks, such as the parent and child node relationships, as well as the endpoints for the deployment where various applications are hosted. And then we see which applications are hosted or deployed into those deployment nodes. For example, we have a parent-child relationship between this customer's computer and the web browser deployment nodes. And for instance, we also see that the web browser deployment node hosts the container, which is single page application. And we can explore some other similar associations on this deployment diagram as well. In this demo dataset, I don't have anything captured as an infrastructure node, so I will not be able to demonstrate that. But to give you a hint, infrastructure node is something that an application invokes rather than is deployed onto, for example, a DNS or a load balancer or something else, which basically it utilizes to fulfill its functions. Let's go back to the diagram and see the next level, which is a component level. And the component is nothing other than a cohesive set of code elements within your code base or the system. In other words, container will consist of components, so it's a further drill down of the container into a more granular pieces. Component is not a separately deployable unit, so typically components will interact within the process, and also the components might correspond to various cohesive elements within your code base depending on the paradigm or the approach you use. In some cases, they might correspond to the modules, which are maybe a namespace or a folder structure in your project. In other cases, you might be grouping your code-related elements, such as classes, using some other characteristics rather than a namespace, and you could as well name that as a component. So the component is something independent from other components, at least from the understandability and analysis standpoint. As about the technology concept, it is something that originates from a technology which we mentioned earlier and which this component perhaps implements. An example of a technology concept could be an Angular service or an Angular controller or an Angular component, or on the backend it could be a controller in the MVC paradigm. Let's try to create one diagram on this level for components. So as you can see, I have dropped various object types, specifically components primarily. I need to tell you that all these components, it seems, belong to this single container API application. And API application in this case plays a supporting role, again, because it does not belong to this layer of the diagram natively. So I have removed all those containment associations for clarity of the demonstration only, but they are there in the object catalog designer on the left side. And the associations which I have left on the screen express various relationships between the components. For example, the reset password controller, it seems accesses two components, first of them being security controller, perhaps for executing the password reset and checking some security constraints, and afterwards sending the confirmation email using the email component. And similarly, you can see other associations as well expressed on the screen. And this diagram, if I had saved it as a separate instance of a diagram, would serve well as a component diagram. One kind of object which is missing here is a technology concept. Let me add some of them here just to demonstrate how you could use them. After some restructuring of the diagram, you can clearly see that it seems we have three Spring Bean components on the screen, one of them being email component and the others being security component and mainframe banking system facade. All of them are Spring Beans, and this concept itself, the Spring Bean, it seems originates from the Spring MVC technology. And hence we have expressed all the possible intent using the component diagram, both the components as well as their belonging to the container, as well as the technology concepts they implement and where those technology concepts originate from. And this will conclude this third section of the meta model, which is the component level diagrams. And I want to demonstrate one more final one, which is specified as a supplementary level, and that is system landscape diagram. Let me quickly create a diagram that represents this level of detail. And in this case, I have removed all the redundant labels because we had discussed them earlier. But what we see on the screen is effectively a system landscape diagram because we are representing multiple software systems and multiple persons interacting with each other. And we could as well dive into each of these software systems, just like how I did for one of them, the internet banking system. And we could see what containers, components are under those. Also on this diagram, what we see is how persons interact with each other and what other software systems other persons use. In this case, the back office staff and the customer service staff, which perhaps work for the banking organization, use the mainframe banking system perhaps for the supporting or some other back office operation purposes. And the personal banking customer, perhaps by phone or some other means, will interact with the customer service staff. Perhaps we are making a support call or asking for assistance. And the system landscape diagram is the last one that I wanted to show you. As you can see, we have successfully demonstrated all 3 C levels of diagrams, that being system context diagram and the container diagram and the component diagram. And we also demonstrated 2 supplementary level diagrams, last one being the system landscape diagram, and earlier we also created one of the deployment diagrams. I hope this video gave you enough clarity to go ahead and use the C4 model meta model within Archipeg and create your software architecture diagrams at various levels. If you have any questions, as always, reach out to us and we will be happy to help you. And good luck with your architecture initiatives. All the best. Thanks. Bye-bye.